All right, there we go. Oh, apparently I'm recording with AI Companion, whatever that means. Maybe it'll give me a summary when we're done.
That's so interesting these days.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah, we have one more minute. I hope students, yeah, they're showing up.
I saw a fair number of people who had accepted the calendar invite. So I was like, oh, good, some people will be here. I will keep an eye on the waiting room.
If you want me to do that, you can just make me a co-host and
Oh, you know what? That's not a bad idea.
yeah, I'll do that for you so that you can
Let me
focus.
do that. Great, thank you. I've also heard about Wi-Fi issues all across campus the past couple of days, and mine keeps like looking like it's thinking of going away. So hopefully it'll be okay. But if I disappear, I will be back.
Okay. Okay. You can get started if you want to, and I'll take care of the waiting room.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, hello everyone. I am Casey Fiesler. If you're a computer science student, you probably have not seen me around very much. I am faculty in information science, but I have a courtesy appointment in computer science. And so one of the things that's great about having that affiliation with computer science is that I can advise CS graduate students, which I have done before. I've had a couple of really great CS master's students who have done theses with me. And so I actually contacted Rajshri a couple of weeks ago and said, hey, if you happen to know of any graduate students in CS who might be interested in these kinds of topics, please let me know. So I will talk a little bit about myself in general and the kind of research that we do in my lab, with a particular emphasis on the kind of work that I need people to do right now and that I'm particularly excited about. But I also am happy to answer general questions about information science. For example, if folks are interested in knowing more about the kind of work that's happening in our department, or what the relationship is like to computer science, or that sort of thing. And that was probably a good enough little ramble at the beginning that I can get started on the on stuff, knowing that most people are here. I don't have like a formal presentation or anything, but I do have a bunch of tabs open in Chrome, so I'm going to share my screen so that I can talk through some things with visual aids, despite the fact that I don't have slides for you or anything. So just a moment, and then actually the first one will be, and I will put this back up at the end. Let me, Zoom is doing a weird thing. Let me try something here. Oh, so one thing is that I just got back from sabbatical, and everything on my computer needed to be updated, including Zoom and the operating system and everything. All right, I'm gonna give you links because Zoom will not currently let me share my screen on my on my own Zoom account. That's totally fine. Okay, so let me first give you a link to my lab website, and because this is all I was going to show you anyway, so I will talk you through some things. And also, if anyone is watching this later and you don't have access to the chat, it's very easy. It is www.internetruleslab.com. So that is the name of my lab. Naming a lab is an interesting experience as an early faculty member, because you have all of these ideas about what your work is going to be, and you may or may not be correct about that. But it does have the benefit of having a very cool acronym, which is IRL. So the way that I describe our work, and you'll see that in sort of big letters on the front page of, oh, thank you, Rashri. Wait, how could we? Oh, you can share because the problem is my computer. Uh, Thank you. Well, I will ask you to navigate to a couple of places then as we do this. Thank you so much. So as it says here, the way that I think about the work that we do is that we are trying to keep technology and our network spaces more awesome for everyone, which has included a lot of work on technology ethics and policy, also work around social justice, marginalized groups in technology. But one of the major things that we've been working on in my lab for the past, oh gosh, 5 or 6 years now, is CS education, and specifically education around ethics. Um, so actually, Rashri, if you could click on at the top where it says our research, I'll just mention really fast some of the sort of general areas. So most of the things that are listed here under current projects are things that are being led by graduate students and are sort of in progress and that sort of thing. So for example, some of you might know Robin Burke, who's also a faculty member here. He does work on Rex's fairness, and he and I advise a graduate student and co-advise a graduate student. And so this is some of the work that she's doing, et cetera. I also have a career grant from the NSF that is funding work on ethical speculation. And so that's around how do we imagine things that might go wrong and build that into the technology design process. So if that's something that you're interested in, I would be happy to talk to you about that more generally. But I will say that the area where I am really seeking graduate students who are interested in working in this space, and this is largely because my current advisees are not working in this space, is ethics education. And actually, Rashri, so if you could click on that link that says responsible computing, this is a sort of landing page for this if you want to find out a whole lot more about the work that we've been doing here. So I've mentioned I've done some work with some CS master's students in the past. This is kind of the area that we were working in. So for example, one student that I worked with, Julie Jarzemski, she designed a programming assignment for an intro programming class around content moderation, where you learn about some programming topics by designing a very simple content moderator for a social media platform for cats and dogs, and also learn a little bit about algorithmic bias and how content moderation and that sort of thing works. And then she did focus groups with students about how they liked the assignment and suggestions that they would have. And we published a paper about that, which was great. We've also in my lab created a number of other mostly intro programming assignments. The idea being that if you're gonna learn about how Booleans work, you might as well learn about it in an interesting context. It's also going to teach you a little bit about responsibility behind computing or some sort of common ethical issues. And another student, CS a master's student who worked with me, Michelle Tran, she did focus groups with students who were working on group projects together in computing courses. And what she asked them about was, hey, when you were, doing this capstone project, it was a lot of capstone students, so not entirely, some software engineering classes and that sort of thing. Were you thinking about ethics at all? Did anyone suggest that you should, if you were going to pretend, that this project was more real, what kind of support would you have needed to think through the ethical implications of what you were doing and try to design for that? So we just published a paper about that as well. In fact, she just presented it a couple of weeks ago at a conference in Australia. And that's one area that I'm interested in doing some work on moving forward. So with all of this in mind, I will tell you sort of two major areas where if these sound exciting to you at all, please contact me. So one is just what I described, following up on Michelle's work. I am very interested in how we can have educational experiences for computing students that encourage them to think through ethics all throughout the sort of pipeline of software engineering or design, um, and also particularly in ways that are going to mimic kind of real world industry experiences. And this can include not just issue spotting, like, how do you know if there's going to be a potential privacy violation, but also then what do you do? Um, One of the things I'm really interested in exploring is how can we teach students the kinds of skills they might need to advocate for themselves once they're working in these kinds of environments. How do we think about power? How do we think about things like whistleblowing? Making a case for yourself, communicating and negotiating. It's not just about thinking, oh no, here's something that might go wrong, but how do you explain that to someone who has the power to make decisions in a way that's going to convince them that you need to do something about it? And then also that component of how do we help people think about things that might go wrong? So some of the work that I've done in the past, for example, has been around almost like thinking through these problems, sort of like science fiction. If you can pitch a Black Mirror episode about how tech might go wrong, can you think about how things might go wrong and sort of the stuff that you're building right now? So that's one area that I'm really interested in, those sorts of educational experiences in the classroom and how they can encourage students to think ethically, once they're in the workforce. Um, the other thing that has not started at all yet, because this is brand new funding, and I'm very excited about it. I haven't even announced this yet. This is hot off the presses. Like Rashri doesn't even know this, even though she's on my LinkedIn. um, uh, the US government right now is very interested in AI education, as you can expect. And so a pitch that I made to the National Science Foundation was a lot of people are learning about AI outside of formal educational uh, settings. So, there's a lot of folks like you who are studying computing, but a lot of people need to know a little bit about AI, even though they're not going to take a class on it. And this includes, everyone from middle schoolers to my dad. And one place that people are learning about AI is social media. And one problem with that is that there's a lot of bad information on social media. Um, so inspired by that, I also do a lot of science communication online. So I don't have, but there's a statistical likelihood that at least one person in here has seen me on TikTok. So I do a lot of that kind of work already. So I'm trying to create some educational content about AI and AI ethics online. But I was inspired actually by the work of a former PhD student here in computer science whose committee I was on years ago. His name is Mike Skirpin. He is at least part-time at Carnegie Mellon now. But his dissertation was he created this immersive theater project where groups of computing students and theater students, like theater and art students, got together and created this theater thing that taught about data ethics. It was pretty cool. And some of the papers that he wrote were about how computing students learned about art and how to communicate and stuff, and theater and art students learned about computer science and data ethics. And then the audience learned stuff about data ethics while being entertained, and all this learning. So my pitch has been to put together teams of computing and like communication and media production students to create social media content about AI, educational content about AI. And so that will hopefully be starting up next semester. I need to talk to lots of different people about making this happen, including people in computer science and people in COM and other places in CMCI about recruiting students and that sort of thing. But that is something that will be starting up, and I'm interested in working with students who would want to do research on topics like, what do people need to know about AI? Like, what do, say, high school students need to know about AI? What does my dad need to know about AI, or the average person on social media? And also about these educational experiences for the people who are creating this content. How do people who are interested in teaching computing students how to communicate their ideas better, or interested in, how these sort of creative endeavors can help you learn more about computing. And so I don't know entirely what all of this is going to look like yet, but that is something that I'm very interested in. So that is my sort of spiel about my lab in general and the particular kinds of things that that I am interested in. I don't have, full disclosure, I don't have like GRA lines or anything for any of this work right now, maybe in the future. But I am very happy to advise uh, theses or independent studies or that kind of thing. And sometimes I do have some hourly funding, particularly over the summer, that sort of thing. And yeah, so I would be happy to answer questions about anything that I just talked about, or information science in general, or anything like that, if folks have questions. And thank you for driving, Roshri. I will also put my email in the chat, but it's very easy. It's casey.fiesler@colorado.edu. I'm also the only Casey Fiesler in the universe, so if you Google me, it is all me. Anyone have any questions?
So I have a question.
Yeah. Oh, hi.
Hello. So you mentioned with the responsible computing group and looking at educational experiences, each student going into the workforce. Do you think there's also space there for looking at people already in the workforce doing like continuing ed or like say master's program while they're working full time to also encourage that behavior?
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, I'll actually say, so one of my current PhD advisees, Amber, is interested in sort of like workforce training sort of stuff. So one of the things she's looking into, for example, is how privacy professionals are suddenly being asked to do AI. Like this report came out recently that was like of a ton of different types of businesses, different industries, and they were asked like, who at your organization is like doing AI governance, and the answer is privacy people. Which is interesting. I mean, like 80% or something, the answer was privacy people, which is interesting. And I can imagine how that could happen, because it's like, oh, AI governance, what is that? Who do we know who knows stuff about governance and knows stuff about tech? I guess the people who do privacy. Uh, so she's been interested in like, how can we train people up to do new kinds of things once they're already in the workforce? And then, sort of like I think a kind of bigger piece of what you just asked is like, if my goal is like, let's get people who are working, in tech thinking about ethics more, like there are a lot of people already there who aren't going to be taking these classes that I want to intervene in. So what do we do in that sense? And I think that's a good question. I mean, one thing I can say is that like, so I mentioned I did this project about like, well, actually, I don't know if I said this, but I have a teaching exercise where people pitch Black Mirror episodes. And it's online, but people can use it. Lots and lots of teachers have used it. There's a non-zero chance it's used in some CS class here, actually. But it's also being used at companies now. Like someone at Microsoft said they used it for their team as a sort of like team building, ice breaking kind of thing to get them start thinking. I last summer went to Boston Dynamics and ran it there with a bunch of, robotics engineers, folks. And so I think coming up with these sorts of like activities and toolkits and that sort of thing is really helpful. That's one of the pieces of my career grant as well, is like, can we create tools to help people think about what might go wrong? So that's something that I'm interested in too.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Oh, and I see a question in the chat. I'll read. Yeah, and you guys are totally welcome to leave questions in the chat if you would prefer. Someone said, you mentioned the risk of people misusing AI or not understanding the full scope of AI from social media influencers. In what ways do you vision to educate people, especially outside of a computer science background, about what could go wrong with AI? Yeah, so hopefully I'm interpreting your question correctly. I mean, one thing that I think is really important when it comes to sort of basic AI literacy. And I think this actually applies to lots of kinds of computational literacy. Like, I'll be completely honest, I'm not someone who thinks that everyone needs to learn to code. I do, however, think that basic computational literacy, like, you don't need to know how to, you don't need to know, how to necessarily write a line of code, but understanding the basics of how computers work, to the sense that you know that they're not magic, I think is incredibly powerful, because the less something seems like magic, the more empowered you are to see flaws and to critique it. Like, the more that you understand about how technology might be working on you, the more you can have sort of valid critiques of that. An example that I've talked about for a while with this is, you might recall when the Facebook papers came out, the Facebook whistleblower, that one of the stories that came out of that was that the Facebook newsfeed algorithm was weighting angry reactions higher than likes in terms of how content appeared on your feed. And so one reaction to that wasn't like that people were, some people don't know that there's an algorithm. So even just the knowledge that there is something that is deciding what you see on your news feed, so a technical system, a computational system, and that and the fact that someone like clicks an angry emoji actually makes that more likely to appear on your feed, was very eye-opening for a lot of people. And just knowing that was very powerful. So I think that, even though we obviously have a huge diversity problem in tech, even in cases where we don't have particularly diverse teams designing technology, the more diversity we have in the people who feel empowered to critique technology, the better. Because we're going to get more people with different kinds of life experiences who are able to offer critiques of technology. So when it comes to AI, I think this issue of like, it seems like magic is even more profound than sort of like everyday technology. I don't know if any of so some of you might have heard of Eliza, like the chatbot Eliza from the 1960s. Joseph Weizenbaum wrote a paper about Eliza, and I think like 1966 or 67, in Communications of the ACM. And one of the things that paper says is that even to like someone who's paying attention, this technology, this chatbot seems like magic. But as soon as you can sufficiently explain it, the magic crumbles away. I'm paraphrasing, of course. So the thing is, I can very easily explain to someone how ELIZA works. ELIZA, like pretty simple, right? Sort of like Mad Libs. It is way harder to explain to someone how generative AI works. Way harder. And trust me, I've tried. And so I think that the closer that we can get there, the more that people understand how it works, the more they understand its limitations, right? So like at some point I made a TikTok that where I was trying to explain how like the limitations of generative AI by using the movie Frozen and that song where she says we finish each other's sandwiches. In terms of like, it's not a truth machine. It's a what word comes next machine. And I legitimately had some people say, oh my God, this makes sense to me now. Oh, that's why it can get things wrong. And so I think even like very, very basic explanations can be super helpful for people sort of understanding the limitations of the technology, which then gets you to a lot of kinds of things that can go wrong. And then of course, a lot of other kinds of things that can go wrong in terms of ethical implications and that sort of stuff are things around, disinformation, which is on purpose, or bias, of course. And then, of course, there's all the sorts of things behind it, like labor issues and job loss and intellectual property and consolidated power and all of these kinds of things. And sometimes people like will tell me like, oh, the stuff that you make content on social media, like it's great, but like some of it's kind of obvious. Like people know this stuff, and I'm like, no, they don't. I mean, yeah, there's always someone who didn't know that. And one of the issues is that people aren't necessarily seeking out this kind of information, right? So there's a big difference between someone who's gonna like go read an article in the MIT Technology Review about AI and sustainability, and the person who is scrolling through their TikTok feed and like there's someone dancing, and then there's me who's like, here's the problem with AI that people aren't talking about. Did you know that it takes as much energy to generate an image with stable diffusion as it does to charge your entire phone? And they're like, what? I didn't know that. And they weren't looking for it, right? This is actually one of the reasons why I like TikTok and Instagram and other sort of algorithmic social media, is you just sneak in there. So I don't know if that entirely answered your question. Feel free to give a follow-up if not. Anyone else have questions? Oh, here we go. So someone says, how are the trainings that you mentioned delivered? Is it mostly through social media, or are there interactive tools that are being developed? So the new stuff that I'm talking about in terms of like AI education aimed for the like very, very sort of basic and general public, that I'm imagining as social media content, mostly short form video, but maybe some blog posts and this kind of thing. Though I also would like to consolidate a lot of what we create to into sort of packages that could be given to teachers, for example. Something that I'm actually working on right now, and if anyone would like to help me do this, would love some help. I have about 250 short form videos that I have posted on TikTok about AI ethics. I'm trying to turn those videos into basically a syllabus. So I'm creating a website that has embeds of these videos along with like extra readings and stuff like that. So like, here's 20 videos about, you know, generative AI and bias. And then here's some like journal articles that you could read. And here's a bunch of news articles that are about this topic and that sort of thing, and like consolidate all that together, mostly as a package for teachers. Because people sometimes tell me that they use my videos in a classroom, and I think it would be helpful if there was a way to get to them easily besides like a TikTok playlist. But some of the other things I mentioned, you know, in terms of like the Black Mirror writers room exercise, or some of the like you know, programming assignments and stuff, those were all like sort of openly available on my website just for people to use. Interactive tools, no, not yet. I can maybe imagine something coming out of the ethical speculation work that became us. I could imagine maybe a flowcharty type of tool, but no, we haven't gotten that far yet in thinking about it. And while I'm waiting for more questions, I guess something a logistical that I can mention, in part because just in case prospective students watch this as well. So as I mentioned, I can advise CS PhD students and master students, also information science PhD students, of course, and master students, and Atlas. I've never actually advised an Atlas PhD student before, but I have advised an Atlas master student. So, and undergrad theses. I also advised a really great undergrad CS honors thesis. That was fun.
So I do have a follow-on question if
Sure.
anyone else is going to ask anything. Going back to like the ethics and education, from what you've seen and done, are you seeing that that is better when it's more direct, saying, hey, we're going to teach you about ethics as part of this exercise, or doing it subtly where it's actually in the background and at the end they say, oh, I didn't realize you were also teaching me.
You know, I don't actually think that specific question is something that I've looked at. So and actually I can talk a little bit about sort of more generally some of the work that we've done in this space. So actually, this is kind of related to that though. Something that we've looked at a lot is integrating ethics into technical classes, as opposed to like teaching it on its own. And everyone here sort of does both. I mean, actually, well, actually, I don't know what it looks like in the graduate program, but in the undergraduate program, in CS, for example, there is an ethics requirement, and it's like, here's 3 different classes that could fulfill this requirement. My class is one of them. Bobby Schnabel teaches one, and there's also one that's taught in philosophy. But then there also are some classes that will have, you know, something that's kind of integrated into it. So for example, I'm not sure if anyone's still using them, but for a while, at least, some of the intro programming classes, both in CS and in information science, were using these, using some of these assignments that my lab created. And in theory, you should be doing both. Like I mean, I've given talks at a lot of places about CS ethics education, often in front of, you know, CS departments where they're not doing this at all. And I'm sort of making my pitch as to why this is important. And in theory, you should be doing both. And there are lots of reasons for this. The argument for teaching standalone classes, and hopefully that are required, is, though I say that in my class actually isn't required in information science, is that you get a deep subject matter expert and you get sort of the space to really delve deeply into it. But then the embedded stuff, like integrated ethics stuff, there are some benefits to that. And one is that lots of people take one programming class. Like there's a lot of people at this university who are going to take one single intro programming class, and that's it. but you can do a lot of damage with a little bit of code, right? Like, you know, like you don't know how far someone's going to get. And you know what they, maybe they take 3 programming classes, but they're not a CS major. So why would they take the ethics class? Or maybe they dropped out of their, you know, I'm thinking of how many like tech CEOs dropped out of their CS program, maybe before they got to their required ethics class. So I feel like anywhere you're learning about tech and you're learning to code, there should be something that makes you think about just the fact that this does not exist in a vacuum. And if you're writing code, it is doing something in the world. Um, uh, so that's one part of it. And also it helps like, it's good to learn things in context. So like, if you take a machine learn, I mean, I'm guessing that probably a machine learning class talks a little bit about bias at least, but like, let's say that you took a machine learning class and you never hear anything about bias at all. So like you have to wait until 2 years later when you take your ethics class for someone to tell you about bias. Whereas maybe it would have, you know, it would have been a little bit more impactful if you learned about it when you were doing it. And I also think that helps to emphasize that this is part of being a computer scientist. It's part of doing computer science, that like if you build a machine learning model and it's racist, you did a bad job. Like it's bad. It's not that it's just bad. And so like you did a technically bad job at that. And if no one tells you that, if no one's teaching you how to do it better, you know, you don't want to wait until later to figure that out. So yeah, I think that this I think that in that way it can actually sometimes be a little more subtle when it's like part of the technical thing that you're learning. And actually something that, speaking of being subtle, something that comes up a lot in this context is like, do we call it ethics or not, which is kind of contentious. I talk about ethics when I'm writing about it and that sort of thing, just because people know what that means, but I'm kind of using it as shorthand. A lot of people in this space are very intentionally not using that word, especially in the classroom, because they're afraid it might be kind of loaded. The problem that I run into is that when I tell, you know, a CS instructor who isn't really thinking about this stuff, like, oh, you should talk about ethics in your machine learning class, they think I mean like moral philosophy. They think I'm telling them to read Kant. When I'm like, no, I mean like machine learning ethics, like a very applied kind of thing. Like that's what I mean. And so it can be a little bit of a tricky word sometimes, because people, you know, think it means different kinds of things. But other terms that are used a lot in the education space are like responsible computing or socially responsible computing, or sometimes we're talking about critical computing or social justice, and these sorts of things as well is where you'll find a lot of this. And I will say the night and day difference in how much this is being talked about and researched now from when I started my faculty job, like I would say around like 2017, 2018 was when like people finally like really started talking about this. And actually I was part of a systematic literature review that was published very early this year about ethics in CS education. And we have a chart of like publications from ACM SIGC venues. And it just like jumps dramatically, the amount of research that's taking place in the space. And you know, something that I would add as well, you know, especially for the people who've stuck around this this whole time, is that if you know, if you're someone who is considering a career in teaching, you know, either like being a professor or being an instructor or being like a K-12 computer science teacher or that sort of thing, I really do feel like having some competence in this area is really, I think it's very appealing to employers, but I also think that it's just a good thing, like to be able to talk to students, even if you're teaching technical topics, about the sort of social relevance and that sort of thing. Oh, and I've got another question in the chat. Does your team work on building AI detection tools like deepfake detectors? Could be a way to spread awareness about AI. No, my team is not building these things, which is fine because other people are building these things, right? When it comes to things like social media content, I am very often pointing people to stuff that other people are doing. Like, I am only an expert on so many things. Like, I do talk about my own research on social media, but there's so way more out there than what I do. And so sometimes I am pointing people to tools and stuff that are out there. I have kind of mixed feelings about AI detection. I don't, for example, I don't like it in educational context, but that's a different kind of thing. But information and media literacy in sort of the age of AI is something that I do a lot about on social media. Actually, yesterday there's a Denver Post article that is kind of quoting me all over it, and it's about a YouTube channel that is 100% devoted to fake true crime stories. They're all made up. It's an AI voice. It's like AI generated headshots. I suspect the scripts were probably written by ChatGPT. Millions and millions of views on these videos. And I'm scrolling through the comments, and there's like thousands and thousands of comments, and not a single person saying, wait, was this made by AI? Or are we sure this is real? Or isn't this? Nothing. Everyone just 100% assuming that it's real. And the reason that the Denver Post wrote about it was because a reader wrote to them and was like, oh my God, why aren't you covering this wild true crime thing that happened in Littleton? And then, of course, everything that's happening with the election. So the thing that I've been trying to do is like draw attention to these things, deep fakes and disinformation and these kinds of things, in order to try to teach people about and convince people to verify the source of information, look for other evidence, these kinds of things, which I think is super important. For example, for K-12 students, as our brains are developing and we're learning to be citizens, that maybe we shouldn't believe everything we see on YouTube. Any other questions? I should mention that if this made any of you excited about taking my class, it is full this semester. My ethics class is full this semester. I will teach again next year, for those of you who will be around next year. And in the spring, I am teaching a grad online communities class.
Great. It seems like a quiet crowd today.
Yeah.
Wednesday afternoons, right? It's a hump day.
Are there, Rajshri, are there any frequently asked questions, any logistical questions that might be?
A lot of times, master's students tend to ask, which I think you answered already, that if you were open to advising them for independent study, because that's what they'll be looking for. A handful might be looking for thesis as well, if they're interested in the topics in which you already answered. I think you covered all the bases, at least for the logistics stuff. And of course, Julie and Michelle were amazing students. They've gone to great places now. Julie is a teaching faculty with us, which is, I'm so excited about. She's always been passionate about teaching. But yeah, so I think with that, since people are not asking any questions, I'm guessing it's a good sign they've understood the whole thing, I guess. This morning I had a presentation. I said it was either really good or really bad because no one was asking any questions. But regardless, I think with this, people don't have any questions. We can actually return 15 minutes of gift of time and thank Casey for her time.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Please do feel free to reach out if you have any questions, or if you might be interested in any of these topics, just shoot me an email.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.